My name is Lloyd Tanner. I'm 57 years old, and 4 days after I wired $38,000 toward my son's wedding, his fiancée sent me a text saying the ceremony would be intimate, just immediate family, and the people who had genuinely been there for Cole. My mother wasn't on that list. She'd already bought a dress. I read the message twice, standing in my driveway at 11 at night with an empty coffee mug in my hand. Then I did a calculation. It was a Friday wire. The teller had mentioned it might not clear until Monday. I checked the app. Pending. I went inside. I didn't text back. Before I take you there, let me go back to the Friday. I walked into my branch on King Street at 20 minutes to 3. I'd been under a crawl space since 7 that morning, so there was still gypsum dust on my knees. I didn't think to change. It didn't seem like the kind of errand that required it. The woman who's worked that counter since I opened the account in 1998 pulled up my file before I'd finished saying good afternoon. I wrote the number on the transfer form. 38,000. 20 of that came from selling my truck. A 2012 F-150, 287,000 kilometers. My wife had ridden in the passenger seat of that truck every Saturday morning for 7 years before she got sick. I sold it to a man in Burlington for cash, and he paid me in an envelope, and I drove the borrowed work van back to a job in Stony Creek to finish sweating a copper line that had been waiting on me since noon. The other 18 came from my RRSP, early withdrawal, 30% withholding tax on an amount that size. I'd done the math on the back of a Tim Hortons bag. I knew what I was giving up. After a while, I stopped doing the math. She turned the screen toward me to confirm the memo line. I typed, "For Cole." That was it, no explanation, no note. She hit send. The printer behind her started up. She mentioned, the way you'd mention weather out a window, that a Friday transfer that late might not settle until Monday, depending on the receiving institution. I nodded. I took my receipt. I folded it into my shirt pocket behind a mechanical pencil and drove back to Stony Creek. I didn't tell my son. I figured the money would introduce itself when it needed to. There was a group chat. It was called The Big Day and had 22 people in it. I'd been added without being asked, which I didn't mind. Kelsey's mother, Yvonne, sent what felt like 40 messages a day. Venue comparisons, catering menus, something she kept calling an inspiration board, which as far as I could tell was photographs of other parties arranged in a grid. In 6 months I sent 4 messages. 2 were thumbs ups. One was a question about parking that someone I didn't recognize answered. The 4th was in July, something like "looks beautiful." Yvonne replied with a heart. The chat moved on to centerpiece options before I'd set my phone back down. I wasn't sitting at home brooding about it. I was working 10-hour days. I read that chat the way you read a road sign for a town you're not going through. Then in August, Kelsey posted a photograph. A chalkboard sign, tall, dark wood frame, leaning against what looked like an entryway. Someone had written a word across the top in careful white chalk lettering. Contributors. The caption said they wanted to honor everyone who had made the day possible. Yvonne replied below it within the minute. 14 heart emojis. I looked at the photograph maybe 5 seconds. I thought it was decoration. The kind of thing young people do now. Welcome signs, seating charts, frames with quotes about love. I set my phone down and went back to the job I was on. I'd seen the word a month early, and it meant nothing to me. My mother lives out on County Road 5, about 20 minutes from my house. I go out Tuesday evenings to check on things. She's 76, a trick knee and a chest freezer that trips the breaker if she runs the microwave at the same time. I was resetting the breaker when the message came in. I wiped my hands on my jeans and looked. Direct message from Kelsey, not the group chat. Direct. "Hi Lloyd, we've decided to keep things really intimate. Just immediate family and the people who've truly been part of Cole's journey. I hope you understand." Below it was a screenshot, seating chart, 6 tables, names in small type. I zoomed in and went through everyone. 112 names. My mother was not there. My brother was not there, Jerry, who has known my son since Cole was 13 and used to let him tag along on service calls, was not there. My wife's sister, who drove down from Sudbury last Christmas, was not there. 8 people from my side, gone from a table plan I had never been shown. I read it twice. My hands didn't shake. Something went quiet instead, like a valve shutting off further down the line. My mother called from the kitchen. Was I done? "Done," I said. I put the panel cover back and made sure the freezer light came on. Then I sat in the work van in her driveway and opened the banking app. Still pending, and there was something else on that screen. A hold notation I hadn't expected. I closed the app. I didn't reply to Kelsey. Not that night. Not ever. Before I go further, I owe you an honest answer to something you're already wondering. Why didn't I just say something? My wife used to do that for me. Her name was Wendy. We were married 26 years. She had a way of bringing me into a room. We'd be at a dinner somewhere and she'd say, "Tell them about the Stelco job, Lloyd." And I'd wave her off and she'd tell it anyway, and I'd stand there embarrassed and glad at the same time. She was the narrator. I was the one who fixed the thing. She died 5 years ago. Ovarian cancer. 14 months from diagnosis. I had $63,000 in medical debt by the end. Specialists, private care, things OHIP didn't cover. I paid it off over 4 years, never missed a payment, and never told a living soul the number. Why would I? You don't announce that you paid your wife's medical bills. You just pay them. And there's the trade I never noticed I was making. My whole working life is meant to disappear. If I do my job right, the heat works and nobody thinks about the man in the crawl space. That's the standard. Good work disappears. That's how you know it was done right. I forgot that people aren't houses. People need to be told. Yvonne had spent 20 years selling real estate in Oakville. She knew how rooms work and who's in them and who isn't. She understood something about me that I hadn't understood about myself yet. If you don't tell your own story, someone else will, and they'll tell it however it suits them. 5 years of being quiet, and I was about to pay for every one of them. Cole called at 10:30. I let it ring twice. He sounded like a man who'd been rehearsing in a parked car. I said his name. He said he assumed I'd gotten Kelsey's message, not a question. Flat. The way you say something you've been sitting with for a few hours. I said I had. I asked if he'd known before she sent it. He said yes. I looked at 2 moths circling my mother's porch light. I asked before or after. Before. I didn't say anything. He filled the silence, which is what people do. He said I knew how Yvonne was, that she ran everything, that if he pushed back on every single thing, they'd never make it to the wedding. He had to pick his battles. I said this wasn't a battle, it was a seating chart. He said it was a 112-person event. There were limits. I said, "Your grandmother has already bought a dress." He went quiet, the real kind, not rehearsed. I could have stopped there. I should have, probably. But I had one question that had been sitting in my chest for 2 hours like a swallowed stone. I asked whether he thought I hadn't contributed. 4 seconds. I counted them. He said, "I don't actually know what you've put in, Dad." I want to be clear about what that did to me, because it wasn't cruelty. He wasn't being cold or dishonest. He was telling me the exact truth about the exact situation I had spent 30 years building with my own 2 hands. He didn't know because I never told him. "That's fair," I said. "I'll fix that part." He said to get some sleep. I said, "You too." I sat in that van a while longer. Then I did something I hadn't done since the week Wendy died. I went through my wallet, card by card, looking for a piece of paper I wasn't sure I'd kept. 6 weeks before that Tuesday night, we'd done the walkthrough at the venue. Clearwater Estate, past Grimsby toward the escarpment. Old stone farmhouse, converted barn, vineyard out back. The kind of place where all the photographs on the website are golden. Yvonne led the tour. She walked into rooms she didn't own like she was about to list them. The coordinator met us at the barn entrance. Pam Decker, 23 years running events at that property. Reading glasses on a lanyard, a 3-ring binder she carried the way a building inspector carries a clipboard. She was not warm. She was not cold. She had a binder and she knew every number in it. At the end of the walkthrough, at the farm table near the window, she opened the binder and set it in front of us. 2 signatures required, planning contact and financial guarantor. Yvonne signed the top line without reading. Planning contact. Pam slid the binder toward me. The line above the signature block said, "Financial guarantor, responsible for outstanding balance and incidental damages." Someone said I didn't need to read the whole thing. Kelsey's aunt, I think. A few people laughed. And I did the thing I always do in a room full of people I don't know well. I didn't make a fuss. I signed Lloyd Tanner, blue pen. 2 signatures, 2 entirely different obligations, Nobody in that barn said so out loud. On the way out, Pam stopped me at the door. She handed me a business card, said if there were any questions about payments, to call her directly, not the main office. I said thank you. I put the card in my wallet behind my health card. It sat there for 38 days. Monday morning I was outside the branch before it opened. Pam's card in one hand, the app open in the other. The teller unlocked the door at 9 and didn't look surprised to see me. I asked about the Friday wire. She pulled it up, still pending on their end. The receiving institution had been in a statutory holiday situation and the funds had not settled. Could it be stopped? She went to get the manager. He was quiet, maybe 50. The kind of man who has said no to a lot of people, in a way that made it feel impersonal. He read the screen for a full minute before he spoke. He said they could submit a recall request. The wire hadn't settled. There was a window, but I'd need to sign a hold harmless agreement. If the receiving party claimed they'd relied on the funds, that exposure was mine, not the bank's. I asked what the success rate looked like at this stage. He said 9 times out of 10. He said I wouldn't know until end of day. I signed. Then I had 8 hours to get through, so I went to work. It's what there is. Jerry showed up at the job site around 11. He'd heard from someone, in a town of 8,000, someone always hears, that I'd been quiet all weekend. That's how it works. Nobody asks. They just appear with coffee. He set one on my toolbox and started without being asked. We worked 40 minutes without talking. Then I told him all of it, the truck, the RRSP, the text, the seating chart. His own name crossed off a table he'd never been assigned to. The bank that morning, the 9 out of 10. Jerry has known me since before Cole was born. We ran pipe together in Brantford in 1994. He didn't say that's awful. He didn't say what a mess. He kept working. When I finished, he set down his pipe wrench and looked at the wall instead of me. He asked one question. What are you going to do with it when you get it back? I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I'd spent 11 straight hours thinking about stopping the wire. I hadn't spent 1 second thinking about what the money meant after that. What a man does with $38,000 he pulled back from his son's wedding. I don't know, I said. He nodded, like that was exactly the right answer. Taking it back is easy, he said. Figuring out what it means, that's the actual job. He picked up his wrench and kept going. At 3:47 that afternoon, my phone buzzed on the toolbox. Wire recall confirmed, funds returned, $38,000 minus the recall fee. I climbed down from the scaffold and went out to the van and sat there for a while. I want to tell you I felt good about it. I felt like a man who just carried a refrigerator back up 2 flights of stairs. The money was mine again, and it had never been about the money. I sat maybe 10 minutes, then I reached into my wallet. Behind my health card was a business card, a direct line. I typed the email address into my phone with my thumbs, which took me a while. I did not write to Kelsey. I did not write to Yvonne. I wrote to Pam Decker. 4 sentences. I rewrote them 6 times, and I still wouldn't change a word. Ms. Decker, I'm withdrawing as financial guarantor on the Pratt Tanner contract for October 12th, effective today. Please have the parties designate a replacement. I'm available by phone if you need anything from my end to process this. I put Cole on the copy. I did not put Yvonne on it. Not to be clever about it, because Yvonne wasn't the financial guarantor. I was. The contract was the contract. The only correct place for that sentence was the desk of the woman holding the binder. I hit send at 4:02 from the parking lot of a commercial building on the East Mountain, with dust on my boots. Then I went back in and finished the job. For 4 days, absolutely nothing happened. The group chat moved on to florals. Someone posted a poll about whether the table runners should be ivory or cream. Nobody called me. Cole didn't call either. I understood that. He'd been copied on an email and didn't have the vocabulary to answer it yet. I went to work. I ate standing at the counter. I watched the Jays with the volume off. Wednesday night, I got out a legal pad and started writing down everything I'd ever done for my son. Not for anyone. There was nobody to send it to. I wrote down being 20 minutes late to the hospital, the night Cole was born, because I was finishing a call in Dundas and couldn't leave a client with no heat. I wrote down 12 years of hockey practices, 5:30 a.m. ice times, 3 different arenas. I wrote down the $3,000 I put toward his car when the transmission went. I wrote down co-signing his first apartment. I wrote down teaching him to read a set of mechanical drawings in the back of Jerry's van. I wrote down the year he was 21 and quit his trades program and came home, and I didn't say one word about it. And I let him sit at my kitchen table for 7 months until he figured himself out. 3 pages, front sides only. Somewhere on page 3 I wrote a line, looked at it, then crossed it out with 2 clean strokes, and wrote something else underneath. I'm not going to tell you what it said yet. Thursday morning, Pam Decker sent 1 email to every party on the venue file. 6 lines, no tone, no adjectives, just procedure. The financial guarantor of record had withdrawn effective Monday. Under Section 7 of the agreement, a replacement with demonstrated financial capacity must be designated within 10 business days. If no replacement was confirmed by October 3rd, the contract would move to default status, and the October 12th date could be released to the waiting list. That was it. Cole told me later what happened on their end, and I've pieced it together from a few different conversations since. Yvonne read it at 7:14 a.m. with a coffee in her hand and didn't understand a word of it. Not because she's not sharp, because she'd signed as planning contact and assumed that covered everything. The role I'd signed into didn't exist in her mental map of the situation. She called Kelsey. Kelsey called Cole. Cole was on a job site in Ancaster with a condenser unit apart in front of him, and he looked at his screen and let it ring. At 9:20, my phone lit up on the dash. Yvonne, in 3 years, she had never once called me directly. I let it go to voicemail. Then I pulled into a Tim Hortons lot and listened. Lloyd, I think there may have been some kind of administrative mix-up with Clearwater. Give me a call when you have a minute. I called her back at 9:45. She picked up on half a ring, warm, bright, open house voice. She said she'd gotten a strange email from the venue and assumed it was a system glitch. I said it wasn't a glitch, I'd withdrawn Monday in writing. The warmth left her voice in about 2 seconds. I've never heard anything like it. Like a light going out from down the road. She asked why on earth I would do that. Because 4 days after I wired $38,000, her daughter told me I hadn't contributed. She said that wasn't what Kelsey meant. I said it was what she typed. She said I was being dramatic over a text message. I said I'd signed a document and I'd withdrawn from it through the process the contract specified. That was the whole event. She asked if I understood what I was doing to Cole's wedding. I looked out the windshield at a man scraping ice off his rear window in the Hardee's lot across the street. I said I was withdrawing from a role that nobody at that walkthrough counted as a contribution. I'd think she'd be relieved, one fewer name. She said it was petty. I said, one thing before you go. She waited. I said she'd been telling people the venue seats 120 for a sit-down dinner. Nothing on the line. Section 2 of the contract I signed says maximum seated capacity, main event space, 160 guests. The silence lasted long enough that I checked the screen to make sure the call hadn't dropped. She said very evenly that she'd have Kelsey call me. And she was gone. She still had no idea about the wire. As far as Yvonne knew, all I'd ever done was put my name on a line at a venue walkthrough. Kelsey didn't call. Kelsey posted a photograph of herself in a car, no makeup, hair up. The caption ran 3 paragraphs. I'll give you the shape of it. Family was supposed to lift you up. Some people chose being right over being present. She was leaning into forgiveness and asking for grace from the people who loved them. She never used my name. She didn't have to. A town of 8,000 doesn't need a name when it already knows whose son is getting married in October. By noon, my phone had done things it had never done before. A cousin I'd taught to skate in my driveway sent me 2 paragraphs about tearing the family apart. A woman from Yvonne's church I'd met once at Thanksgiving sent a Bible verse about peacemakers. Someone screenshotted the post and forwarded it to Jerry to make sure I'd seen it in case I hadn't. I counted the voicemails Sunday night, 34. Then at 5 o'clock, one direct message from Kelsey herself. You're twisting my words. Everyone thinks you're punishing us over a text. That's not who I thought you were. I sat with that for about an hour. Then I scrolled up in that same conversation thread. Her original message was still there. I'd never deleted it. She hadn't either. I took a screenshot, her words, her name, the timestamp, sent it back into the same thread, no caption, not one letter. The typing dots appeared, stopped, started again, stopped a third time. She never replied. I want to stop here for a second, because this is the part where I almost gave in. 34 voicemails. A kid I'd taught to skate calling me the one tearing things apart. Sunday night, I sat in my kitchen with my thumb over the keyboard ready to type, "I'm sorry, let's fix this." If you've ever been the one person holding a line while everybody else calls you the problem, hit like so. I know this room isn't empty. And tell me in the comments when you stopped explaining yourself. Alright. Cole found it on a Thursday. He was going through the joint account he and Kelsey had opened for wedding expenses, trying to work out what was already gone and what could still be shifted around. He scrolled past the line and stopped and scrolled back. Incoming transfer, $38,000, received Friday, recalled Monday. In the memo field, in plain bank font, 2 words. For Cole. He called me at 10:15 at night. I was asleep. At 10:28, headlights swept across my front window. He'd driven 40 minutes. I opened the door in a t-shirt. He stood on the step with his phone in his hand, and he couldn't get the first sentence out. Tried twice. What he finally said was, "Did you sell your truck?" I said it was my truck to sell. And my son, who is 29 years old and 6 feet even, and has not cried in front of me since the morning we buried his mother, put his hand flat against my door frame and came apart. I let him. I put my hand on the back of his neck the way you do with a kid, even when they're not one anymore. When he could talk, he said he had to tell Kelsey. He had to tell all of them, tonight. I said, "Don't." He looked at me like I'd switched languages on him. He said, "They think you walked away from nothing, Dad." "I know what they think," he said, "then let me correct it. I said some things land better when they don't come from the man they'd benefit." He didn't understand. I could see it in his face. He would in 9 days. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday. Yvonne's real estate lawyer, not a litigator, a man who reviews purchase agreements and does title searches, had drafted one page designed to look like the first step before something more serious. Detrimental reliance. A request that I restore my obligations under the Clearwater Agreement within 7 days. I read it twice at the kitchen table. What I felt surprised me. Relief. Because a letter like that is a bluff. And a bluff means the other person has run out of the thing they're actually good at, which in Yvonne's case was getting other people to carry her decisions for her. I didn't call a lawyer. I forwarded Pam Decker my withdrawal email with the original timestamp and 3 sentences below it. "Ms. Decker, for your records, I made no written commitment to any dollar amount for this event, and no such document exists. I signed as financial guarantor and withdrew through the process outlined in Section 7 of the agreement. No further action is required from my end." 11 minutes later, from a woman who deals with weeping brides for a living, 2 words. Received and noted. 23 years of that woman's working life are in those 2 words. The lawyer never sent a second letter. 9 days after Cole stood on my doorstep, there was a dinner. The loft above the main barn at Clearwater, pine floors, vineyard view out the tall windows. Yvonne had organized what she called an appreciation evening for everyone who had made the wedding possible. 40 guests, her family, their friends, business contacts, colleagues from her office and the board she sat on. Jerry called me Thursday morning to let me know carefully, the way you warn someone about ice on a step, that there was an event Saturday. I told him I knew. At the entrance to the loft on an easel was the chalkboard from the group chat photograph. Contributors, 20 names in white chalk. "Not one of them," said Tanner. I wasn't invited. I found out the rest from Cole and from 3 other people over the following 2 weeks. At 7:55 on Saturday evening, while 40 people were finishing their main course, Pam Decker came up the stairs with her binder under her arm. She was not there for dinner. The 10 business days had run out at 5 o'clock. She needed a financial guarantor designation on file before Monday, or she was releasing the October 12th date to the waiting list. She waited at the top of the stairs for a break in the conversation. When it didn't come, she stepped in anyway. She said she was sorry to interrupt, but she needed a guarantor designation before Monday, or she'd have to release the date. The deadline had passed at 5. Yvonne smiled the way you smile at a contractor who's arrived at an inconvenient moment. She said they could absolutely sort that out Monday morning. Pam said she needed a name and proof of financial capacity, tonight. Someone at table 2 asked what a financial guarantor was. Pam opened the binder on the corner of the nearest table. She put on her reading glasses. She turned to the signature page. She read the line out loud, exactly as it was printed, in a room of 40 people. Financial guarantor, Lloyd Tanner. The playlist kept going. Nobody thought to turn it off. 40 people sat there with my name in the air, and directly behind Pam's left shoulder, on a 4-foot chalkboard on an easel, were 20 names in white chalk, and mine was not among them. Yvonne recovered fast, she always does. She said to the room that I'd signed as a courtesy, just a formality, that I hadn't put in a dime. And Cole stood up. My son doesn't raise his voice. He never has. He got that from me. As far as I can tell, it's the only inheritance I'm sure of. He took out his phone and placed it face up on the table, near the candle, and slid it toward the center. That's the bank record, he said. 38,000. Received Friday, recalled Monday. The memo line says for Cole. Nobody moved. He sold his truck, Cole said. He pulled from his retirement account. He took the tax penalty. Then he said the last of it, and he said it looking at the chalkboard and not at her. He wasn't on your wall, he was on your contract. He picked up his phone, put it back in his jacket, and the room did the thing rooms do. For about 4 seconds, 40 people were completely silent. 4 seconds is a long time when 40 people are doing it at once. 30 of those 40 were in Yvonne's contact list. Clients, referral partners, people who had her business card on their fridge or her sign in their yard. Every single one of them had walked past that chalkboard on the way up the stairs. It was a woman named Gail, commercial real estate, knew Yvonne from a regional board they both sat on. I learned this later, who finished it without meaning to. She was looking at the seating chart printout on the table rather than at anyone's face. She said mildly, the way you'd ask about a wine selection, Yvonne, this guest count, is this your book? Nobody had to explain what she meant. Everyone in that room who sold real estate understood exactly what she was asking. And they had all just done the arithmetic. Yvonne said it was an ugly thing to imply. Gail said the venue capacity was 160 according to the contract she'd just seen. She said she counted 14 people at her table alone that she knew professionally. That question did more damage than anything I could have said in a year of trying. Then someone near the window asked why my mother wasn't there. Edna, 76 years old, taught Sunday school at the church on Highway 8 for 24 years. Half the people in that loft had probably been in one of her Christmas pageants. 3 people stood up from their tables. Not dramatically. That's what hit Cole hardest when he described it. They stood up the way you leave somewhere when you realize you shouldn't have come. Quietly, reaching for a jacket. One woman stopped to say something to Kelsey on her way down the stairs. Kelsey went out to the parking lot and didn't come back for 40 minutes. Yvonne stayed. She kept talking. Ceremony timeline, hotel shuttle, her voice even, her posture straight, and not one person in that room was listening to a word of it. Meanwhile, 11 kilometers away, I was standing on a kitchen chair in my front hallway with a light bulb in my hand. The hallway bulb had been out since July, 3 months. A pipefitter's own hallway dark since July, because the one thing you never get to is your own house. I'd finally gotten around to it. I got the old one out, got the new one in. The hall came up warm and yellow. I stood there on that chair looking at it like a man who'd accomplished something. My phone rang at 8:47. I answered with the bulb in one hand, put it on speaker, set the phone on the shelf. Road noise. Cole was driving. He told me the whole thing in about 90 seconds. Fast, doubling back, out of order. Pam at the top of the stairs. Yvonne with her wine glass, his own voice sounding like someone else's when he stood up. I didn't say anything the whole time. Dead bulb in my hand. When he got to the end, he said it twice. She read your name off the contract, Dad. She didn't even know what she was doing for you when she did it. I sat down on the step between the kitchen and the hallway, had to. My legs did it on their own. I want to be honest about what happened next, because I've told this story a few times now, and I always leave this part out. I sat on that step and I cried. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about being right. It was 5 years of nobody telling my story, and a woman with reading glasses, and a binder telling 12 seconds of it by accident. Cole stayed quiet on the line and let me have it. I'll be grateful to him for that as long as I live. When I could talk, I asked him one question, not the one he expected. I said, "Did anyone in that room say your grandmother's name?" He had to pull over. I heard his signal. He said 3 people left because of her dad. 3 people got their coats. I put my hand over my eyes. Then I asked about the wedding. There wasn't one, not in October. Pam released the date Monday morning. She had another couple on the waiting list, and they confirmed by Wednesday. The deposit was inside the 90-day window, and Section 11 is very clear about what happens to a deposit in that situation. It doesn't come back. The invitations had already gone out. 112 of them, letterpress, a print shop in Hamilton. Kelsey sent a recall notice through the wedding website, and about 30 people didn't see it and RSVP'd anyway for 6 more weeks. Gail pulled 2 listings from Yvonne's agency the following month. So did a developer Yvonne had been working with for 2 years. I heard the commissions on those alone were north of $40,000. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where a man in my position is supposed to feel something good. I never said a word about Yvonne to a client. Not once. I've had 100 chances in a town this size, and I never took one. Every dollar of what happened came out of choices she made in a room I wasn't in. Cole and Kelsey split up for a month, the worst month of his adult life. I wrote that in the legal pad. I still have the page. I underlined my part in it twice, because I needed to read it more than I needed to write it. 6 weeks later, Jerry and I were putting a deck on his back addition, and he asked me the question again. "So what did you do with it?" This time I had an answer. The RRSP portion, $18,000, went back in. In Canada, you have 60 days to redeposit a distribution before the withholding comes back. I did it on day 54. It was like it never happened, except that it had. The truck money. I didn't buy my truck back. The man in Burlington had already done it up, and I decided I didn't want to see it. I bought a 2008 F-150 with a cracked side mirror for $11,000, and I have no complaints about it. That left $9,000. I put it in an account with Cole's name on it, and I did something I had never done before in 57 years of paying for things. I told him. I drove to his apartment on a Sunday afternoon with a printed page. I sat at his kitchen table and said the number out loud. He said I didn't have to. I said I wasn't finished. There was one condition, I told him. He waited. This isn't a gift with a bow on it. It's a foundation for whatever life you build in a room where nobody else is running the agenda. If that's not where it ends up, it comes back, and there are no hard feelings either way. He looked at the page a long time. He said, "You could have just done it and not said anything." I said, "I know." He said, "Why didn't you?" "Because last time I did it quietly," I said. "It cost me everything except the money." He found the legal pad in November. I'd sent him to the kitchen drawer for a tape measure, and he came back out holding 3 pages instead. "What is this?" "Put it back." He didn't put it back. He sat on the arm of my couch and read the whole thing front to back, 9 or 10 minutes. I stood in my own living room with my hands in my pockets like a man waiting on a verdict. The hockey practices, the car, the apartment, the 7 months he sat at my table at 21, and I never once said a word about school. He got to page 3 and stopped. He turned the pages around so I could see what I already knew was there. One line crossed out with 2 clean strokes, something written underneath in the same pen. "Why did you cross that out?" he said. The first version said, "Paid for his mother's treatment." Underneath it I'd written, "Held his hand through his mother's treatment." I said, "Because the first one is an invoice." He looked at me. He said, "And the second one is you and me." He didn't say anything else. He folded those 3 pages in half, and then in half again, and put them in his back pocket. I let him. I never asked for them back. I'd spent 30 years thinking the invoice was the love. It's the smallest part. It's the part you can put a number on, which is exactly why it's the smallest part. I wish somebody had told me that at 40. They got married the following June, in Jerry's backyard. 31 people, folding chairs, a rented tent, that Jerry and I put up in 4 hours the morning before and took down in 2 the afternoon after. Total cost, Cole showed me the sheet, without me asking, $4,200. No chalkboard, no contributor wall. The thought didn't cross a single mind out there, as far as I could tell. Yvonne came. I want to say that plainly. She was invited by her daughter, and she came, and she sat in the third row in a nice gray dress, and she was quiet all afternoon. Not repentant. I've never believed it was repentance. There was simply nobody there to work. 31 people in a pipefitter's backyard, and not one of them was going to list a house with anybody. A woman who had spent 20 years managing rooms sat in a folding chair with her hands in her lap. That's all it was. But it was enough, and it was permanently enough, and I've made my peace with it being both. My mother came in the blue dress. She'd returned it to the store in September and gone back and bought it again in April, full price. She told the girl at the counter the whole story while she was doing it, which sounds exactly right. She wore the low heels because she said she didn't trust the ground. Jerry's backyard held all 31 of us, and there was room left over. Cole asked me to say something during dinner. Sprang it on me, which he did on purpose. I don't give speeches. I hadn't written a single word. I stood up with a paper cup of iced tea in my hand, and 31 people looked at me, and I understood in about 2 seconds why Wendy used to do this part. I said 4 things. I said, "Kelsey, you came to my door and told me the truth when you didn't have to. I won't forget that." I said, "Cole, you stood up in a room where it cost you something. Your mother would have gone right through the ceiling." I said, "Jerry, thank you for the yard and for 30 years of showing up with coffee." And then I stopped. I felt the whole thing turn over in my chest. And I did the one thing I had not done in 57 years of living in a body that prefers to do things quietly in the dark. I told them something I had done. My wife used to tell people what I'd done because I never would. She's been gone 5 years now, and I've let all of it just sit there in the dark since. So I'll do it myself one time, tonight. I raised this man on my own for 5 years and with her before that, and I am proud of who he became. That's all. 30 seconds, maybe less. My mother put her hand flat on the table. Jerry looked at the grass. Someone said amen like they were in church, and then looked embarrassed about it. In the third row, Yvonne cried. Nobody went to her, not her daughter, not one of the 31. I noticed it. I didn't fix it. That was the last consequence, and I've decided it was a fair one. I got home a little after 11. Came in through the side door. The hallway came up warm and yellow. Same bulb I'd put in, while standing on a kitchen chair, the night everything came apart. Still going. Probably good for another couple of years. I hung my jacket, put my keys in the dish. Then I did one thing before bed. I opened the kitchen drawer and I put a photograph in it. Cole and Kelsey under Jerry's tent, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. At the bottom of that drawer was a business card, Pam Decker. A woman I've spoken to 5 times in my life, who has no idea that 2 words she read off a signature page in a room of 40 people meant anything at all to one man 11 kilometers away, standing on a kitchen chair. Some debts you can't pay, you just carry them, and try to be worth the carrying. Here's where I've landed, and then I'll let you go. I still pay. That hasn't changed, and it isn't going to. Somebody's transmission goes, somebody's rent comes up short. That's what I'm for. I made peace with that a long time ago. But I'm done doing it quiet. I used to think keeping it to myself was humility. It isn't. Giving without saying anything sounds noble until you understand what you're actually doing, handing somebody else the pen and letting them write down who you are. Yvonne picked up that pen because I left it on the table. She wrote that I hadn't contributed. For about a week, that was the only thing written down anywhere, so it was the truth. Now I sign my name where people can read it. I stood in the hallway a moment looking at that bulb. Then I reached up and turned it off myself with my own hand and went to bed. If someone ever tells you that you didn't show up, go find out who's holding the contract before you argue about it. It's usually a shorter conversation than you think. Type 1 in the comments if you'd have recalled that wire Monday morning. Type 2 if you'd have let it clear and tried to work things out. There's no wrong answer. I read everyone.